What's up, wig splitters? 8-week challenge time. Starting January 1st to February 26th, we're gonna reward the best transformations, men or women. You're gonna get rewarded. 5 G's first place, second place 1,500. Then we're gonna do 5 runner-ups for some yard time. Go to wigsplitterworkout.com for all the details. Let's get in the best shape of your life and go split some wigs. What's up, everybody? Big Herc, getting down fresh out, and you tuned into another dope interview. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button because you don't want to miss out. I have here with me a very interesting individual, Ryan Leone, a best-selling author, a hustler, somebody who's been in the game, and he has a very interesting story to share with us, so stay tuned and make sure you guys dial in. So Ryan, tell the people a little bit about where you're from, how you grew up, and you know how your life was.
So my name is Ryan Leone. I'm 34 years old. I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, but I moved out to Santa Barbara, California when I was 3. So I was raised in Santa Barbara, California, from an upper middle class family. I'm the only child. My parents have been married 40 years, and I had a pretty normal childhood up until age 15. I started getting into drugs, and things went downhill pretty quickly as soon as I started using drugs. I got expelled from 3 high schools within the span of a month, and I spent all of my adolescence and teenage years in lockdown institutions. And then when I was 18, I got into a writing internship program in Worcester, Massachusetts. I moved out there and I tried to start doing writing internship because I wanted to be a professional writer. And I got into IV heroin when I was out there in Massachusetts. Got kicked out of the program, came back to California, and I started becoming an associate producer for Spike TV. This is before the advent of YouTube, and what I was doing is I was buying media clips for Spike TV. They used to have this show, Wildest Moments Caught on Tape. Do you remember that show?
Yeah, I remember that.
And what I would do is I would contact police stations, or I would contact, I'd put ads on Craigslist, and I'd say, hey, I'm looking to buy crazy clips from you, or I'd call police stations and say, I'm looking for police chases. I'd buy the clips non-exclusively, and then I'd broker it to Spike TV, and I was a media broker, and I was doing it so often for Spike and for Court TV that they made me an associate producer. Around that time, I was making a lot more money, so I started putting my money into selling drugs because I was a drug addict. I was addicted to crack, cocaine, and I was addicted to IV heroin. And my habit was so gargantuan back then that I pretty much started selling drugs just to be able to sustain my own habit. So I deviated from the legit path, selling media to Spike TV, and I started selling drugs on a pretty big scale. I was selling kilos of MDMA, I was selling Molly, selling pounds of heroin. And that went on for a couple years. This is when I was like 21, 22. And when I was 23, when I was 23, I got busted by the FBI and DEA on a federal sting. They got me and 109 other co-defendants on a big heroin conspiracy. I got busted in East LA, and they charged me with conspiracy to distribute heroin. I got caught with a half pound, so they didn't get me with a significant amount of weight, but it was enough to put me away for a while. And at first they were threatening 10 to life. started fighting it. I fell within the guidelines. 100 to 400 grams of heroin gives you the 5 to 40 bracket.
Okay.
And I signed for 5 years, and I ended up serving almost 5 years in federal prison.
Okay.
On the first term. I've done 3 now, but the first one was 5 years. And while I was in there, I figured I had started the pathway of becoming a writer before I had deviated when I started selling drugs and became a drug addict. So I kind of buckled down while I was in prison, and I started writing my first novel. Wrote a book called Wasting Talent, and it took me about 3 years to write because I didn't know how to write a novel. I essentially rewrote the same book over and over and over again until I thought I had it right. And I got out in 2013. I was using drugs in prison.
So you still had access to the drugs?
Yeah. I was doing a lot of drugs when I was at Victorville. I was at FCI Victorville, and then I was at FCI Oxford. I was shooting heroin pretty much the whole time I was in prison up until the last year. And I ended up getting busted on a dirty drug test. I went to the hole for 60 days. My grandfather died during that time, and I was in solitary confinement. I just had this very intense, cathartic experience, and I just decided to get sober. So I was sober my last year in prison, and I ended up staying sober for 3 years following that. Mm-hmm. And so when I got out in 2013. I started trying to get my book published. It got published in 2014, and it didn't really take off in the beginning, but after, I'd say about a year and a half, it really just started gaining momentum. I got a lot of bigger named authors behind me, and it became a bestseller in 2016. I've sold 120,000 copies of it now.
So during that time when you were out from 2013 to 2016, what was your primary avenue for sustaining your finances? As far as, were you working? Were you just working on the book? Were you kind of staying out the way? Or you still kind of were in the mix? Or
I had totally stopped hustling. I was out of the game, right? I wasn't doing anything illegal during that period. I'd met a girl, so I had a girlfriend that was pretty well off financially, and she supported my aspirations of being a writer. So she kind of supported me while it materialized. Then I started making enough royalties where I was contributing, and we were living off my book royalties and what money she was bringing in as well. And I was sober the entire time. And then when I relapsed in 2015, she ended up leaving me, and I went in and out of rehabs again. I ended up marrying a girl that had sent me a fan letter for my book.
Oh, wow.
I only knew her for a week. She sent me a fan letter. I wasn't doing well at the time. I was living on my friend's couch, it's kind of couch surfing. I wasn't doing very well financially, and I got a fan letter from this girl, and she said, "Hey, I'm your biggest fan." She was living out in Denver. She was a single mom. She had a 5-year-old kid, and right around that time, I had sold the French rights to my book, so I got a nice little, little chunk of cash, right? And I used that money to fly her out. We partied for a week, and we're at a bar at 10:30 in the morning, and some bartenders "Oh, you guys just make the cutest couple. My husband officiates weddings if you guys want to get married." And we're all drunk at it's 10:30 in the morning. Well, yeah, let's get married. So we ended up getting married. I only known the girl for a week. And needless to say, that was a tumultuous, terrible relationship. We were married for a year, and during that time, my alcoholism had really progressed. I started drinking a lot. I'd already relapsed on the heroin.
Were you guys living together? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're living in North Hollywood.
Okay.
So we're living in North Hollywood, and I'm drinking 2 fists of whiskey a day. I'm shooting heroin on top of that. I'm shooting cocaine too, so I'm doing speedballs all the time. And one day, I'm driving on the 101 freeway by Sherman Oaks, and I'm doing a text message. I'm not looking. I maybe had 2-3 drinks before I was driving, and I look up, and the traffic stopped in front of me. I slam on the brakes. I hit a car that I hits another car, so it accordions.
Oh, man.
And CHP comes, and they let the first people go. They do the insurance report, let the first people go. Second guy, car got totaled, so he had to stay and get a ride out of there. And then they get to me, and he says, "How much have you had to drink today?" And I said, "Honestly, I've had a couple drinks, but I'm not inebriated right now." And he had me walk the line, do the field sobriety test, and he says, "Will you do a breathalyzer for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I knew that I was within the legal parameters, right? Mm-hmm. blow into it, and they leave you in suspense. You know, I blow into it, and as soon as I'm blowing into it, I see 2 other CHP cars pull up, and I knew I was going to jail. You know, whenever multiple cars show
Something's
up,
going down.
You're hit.
Yeah.
And so I blow into it, and I'm like, well, I hear it click. I'm like, what's the number? And he's like, I can't tell you that. We have to do one more test to make sure that it, you know, that it wasn't like a off read on the first one. So, all right, blow it. And I said, what did I blow? And he goes, you blew a .06. And I'm like, oh, thank God. I was taking my stepkid to Chuck E. Cheese today. Thought I was going to miss it, you know. And he's like, no, you're not going to miss it as long as you're going to have time to go to it after you get out of jail. I said, what do you mean? He said, put your hands behind your back. You're going to jail for DWI. I'm like, I blew a .06. Cuffs me, puts me in jail. And I called my wife at the time, and I told her what happened. She's screaming at me, I can't believe you missed his birthday. I'm like, look, I wasn't even drunk. They let me go the next day. Call my PO, and I said, hey, man, I got in a car accident, but, you know, they charged me with the DUI, but I'm going to beat it. Don't worry about it. When I go to court, they're gonna drop it. And he goes, it doesn't matter if you drop it. You're still going to prison for this. I said, really? And sure enough, I go to court about a week later, and it was a DA reject. They dropped the case, but because I was on federal probation at the time, he said, you're going back. So I ended up going to Lompoc on a 3-month, 90-day violation. They actually sent me back to prison.
Wow.
You'd think that they just put me at like MDCLA or at a detention center or jail or something. They actually sent me to prison for 3 months. And I was with Big Meech during that time. He was in the same unit with me. I ran across him. And I told the judge before he had sentenced me to 90 days, I said, hey, man, like, you know, I'd done 5 years on the first one. Now he's having me do 3 months on this little violation. I said.
At the time, were you already piss testing, though? They weren't checking you?
I was piss testing, but I figured out ways to circumvent it. I had it down to a science, right? I had it down to...
All right, that's why I was kind of curious, because I know if you're, you know, if they figure you had any type of drug use, they make you, like, you got to piss every month.
I was doing it every week.
That's what I mean. You got to call in.
Yeah, I was doing color coding.
Yeah.
I was doing it every week, but I figured out ways to beat it, and I was beating my test every single time.
Okay.
I got, in the 4 years that I was on supervision, I got 2 dirties, and both times it was just because I got tested unexpectedly, and I didn't have time to prepare my little concoction to beat it, right? So I told the judge, I said, hey, you know, 3 months may seem insignificant to you, but I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose my apartment that I pay rent for. I'm going to lose my car. My wife guarantees she's going to leave me. Our relationship was holding on by a thread because I'm a junkie and alcoholic. Judge is like, I don't care. So he sends me away, right? 3 months. Sure enough, wife leaves me, lose my apartment, lose the car. Everything that I knew, you know, when you go to jail, material loss is just part of the deal,
Come with
right?
the territory.
It's just part of the game, man. You know, and I accepted that. The second I went for the 3 months, I knew that I lost it all. Get out. My parents live in Santa Barbara, and they're elderly. They're like in their 70s, and they said, why don't you come live with us? I said, okay. I had nowhere else to go. So I move in with them, and I start going to AA meetings because I legitimately want to change my life at this point.
Okay.
I'm sick.
And what year is this?
This is 2017 now.
Okay.
And, you know, my book, even though it had become a bestseller, the royalties are dwindling at this point. I'm not bringing in as much as I was in its peak, right? There was one period where I could support myself off the royalties. It's no longer the case. I'm working on a second book at this time period, but it's just taking me forever to get it done because I'm having such bad drug problems. So anyways, I'm going to AA meetings, and I meet this girl, just a friend, platonic friend, and she's like, hey, will you start hanging out with me? I need someone sober to hang out with. I said, sure. So we go to the beach the next day, and she says, hey, I'm working as an escort. You know, I'm turning tricks. Does that bother you? I said, why would it bother you? You're not my girlfriend. I mean, I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
But let me ask you something. You're sober. Why are you turning tricks if you're sober?